All right, I think we're live, Spence.
Alrighty then. Hey everybody, that this is Ninja Spence here, and then that welcome to like Sunday's double feature, to where that we normally have a podcast event going on right after that the Into the Woods season 3. Please go in and check out that game that is going forward, and then that welcome to bonus roundtable, where that last week we had talked about the D&D movie and its trailers, and then I just wanted to do like a follow up episode to that, talk about the negative experiences of D&D as a whole. And who do I have with me tonight?
You got me. I don't. I think a lot of other people. This was the last weekend of summer, so a couple of them got a little swamped.
Right, yeah. Yeah. So then let's just get up into this more conversational topic about like negative connotations of D&D, and then I know that you have had the most experience with it, Miro. So could you give us a brief history about this whole negative connotations around D&D, and why do people feel this way to lash out about a make-believe game?
Well, part of the problem I run into is I haven't had a ton of negative run-ins personally. Like the worst I got was actually my mom freaking out over a Pit Viper card for Magic the Gathering and saying it was the devil. Glad she didn't actually find the succubus card I had in my black deck. But uh, no, it goes back from the little bit of the history I understand because I have there are several books I want to go back and read, and then I realize, nah, son, what you're going to do is eventually get the audio book and listen to it while you're mowing the yard. So, because it is hard for me to sit still. I don't know if the twitching and the nervous ticks that I do during the game get picked up or not, because I'm always kind of like, okay, I'm getting bored. I'm sitting down. Wait, something happened. So, yeah, when it goes back, if you look back in the 70s when Gygax first started making this game, it was based off of another game. I don't remember if he made it or not. But Chainmail.
Mm-hmm.
Let me actually look this up. Yep, it was made by Gary Gygax. It's a medieval miniature war game created by Gary Gygax and Jeff Pearson back in '71. So they made, and back in the '60s and '70s, there was a lot of wargaming. Like there's a lot of Civil War reenactment with miniatures, or Revolutionary War, World War I, with these miniature figures, and he made a fantasy setting. So first off, I'm gonna say it. If you have that hobby, it's a little nerdy, especially if you go back to the '60s and '70s where video games didn't really exist in large numbers, other than like Pong, Missile Command, and Frogger was coming out. '60s, it was a niche community, and then in the '70s it got more widespread. But even arcade kids would probably call someone that was wargaming a nerd. And then they made D&D to expand off of it because people wanted to give their characters a backstory. And the problem is that, I mean, you can even see it in media depictions today. You have a dungeon master in a dark room with all of these people playing a game, and they dance to the whims of the dungeon master. I mean, it comes out sounding like some really weird BDSM shit from the outside.
Yeah,
And
that is.
and people jump on it because here's the thing: if you have something going on behind a closed door, people immediately start to think it's nefarious. I mean, just look at all the stuff we have written about, Freemasons and Skull and Bones, all the secret organizations. So many
Mm-hmm.
conspiracy theories. So that's connected to that. And also, I mean, let's be honest, what's one of the most fun things you can kill in Dungeons and Dragons?
Dragon.
Dragon. It looks kind of evil. a dragon because
Beholder.
well, it's a. I mean, a dragon looks kind of evil, but what's better?
True.
But then you have pit fiends and spine devils and all these other creatures from folklore. They get brought in, and it's like, what's happening? We're gonna kill the devil, Mom. What?
Right.
Or you lose a saving throw, and now you are enthralled by the succubus. So people heard shit like this and took it out of context, and then leave it to the 1980s version of the alt right, the Christian right, that was having a massive resurgence because there was in the 70s and 80s there was a conservative clapback to the 60s progressive era with civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
So they clap back and they clap back hard. And what was the main victim? D&D was an easy target. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff because, like, if we were starting to talk about the Satanic Panic, which I have not done research on recently, and there's like 8 of those,
Mm-hmm.
it it leads to a bunch of different things, and that's what happened. Is all of a sudden oh, it's this, and also the fact that like the dungeon master usually was some older dude that the kids met at a comic shop, and you know, you know, also back in the 80s, you remember the sliding door vans, right? Like the ones that always had the wicked paint job on the side of them, or what they said was
Yeah.
a wicked paint
Mm-hmm.
job. Those vans
Mm-hmm.
are now the I have free candy vans, pretty much.
Mm.
So, I mean, that's what people would say they are, right?
Right.
So, all this outside imagery to a bunch of people, just they ran with it. They jumped on it. And it got targeted. And I'll be honest, it died out when a few people realized it's bull. But then it came back in the 90s. And it came back kind of with 4th edition. Hey, come here. You're not sick, buddy. You got to go to bed. Love you. That was the fakest cough I've ever heard. Hey, tell Mr. Spencer good night. So whiny.
Good night, Chaos Muffin.
So,
But
child,
yeah, I mean,
my child is trying to get my wife to pick him up.
uh, then that I know from like my experience being just a person of color and stuff. I know that like that I was raised and stuff up in at the church and stuff, and then that I never felt any type of animosity for all of the stuff that I grew up that I had grew up with watching like anime, playing like Pokemon stuff like that. And then that my dad was a big fan of like Lord of the Rings whenever it first came out because he had loved those movies and stuff. And then that all of this stuff was just so unknown to me whenever then I was looking up about the whole like satanic panic and all of that, and then I'm like, it is kind of like whenever that a girl in my high school, she had to be pulled out of our biology class because of that had went up against their values. And then that my parents have always told me this, that you are just there to learn it. You don't have to believe it. If you want to, that's cool, but you are just there to learn it and make an A. And then I just think for me personally, it's just about the unknown in a sense, that somebody is just like looking at it like that, oh my god, that you are trying to make little Johnny, like look at this lecherous succubus, or else that, are you making deals with the devil? No, that we are trying to defeat the devil,
No,
and then
no, Mom. It's my packed sugar daddy. He doesn't like to be called Satan. There's negative connotation with his old name.
exactly, that, and then it is also like that out there, that even though that we will love to be on your podcast, the Dungeon Masters block, one of the creators of the show is an ordained minister, and he still plays D&D and stuff, and he liked tieflings. So what does that say? I just think that somebody that is, that I almost have about a decade within this hobby. I just say it just needs to be a little bit more open minded as far as in, like, why is it looked down upon? Because that, truth be told, it just wasn't D&D. That D&D was also the trendsetter, but it was also other like nerdy games, like video games and comic books were also being lumped in by these groups of people.
Now, I mean, the benefit we have right now is the time we're in. Like, I know the subjects, let's
Right.
mention the negative, but let's be honest. Right now, we live in a time period to where nerds don't read. Not nerds aren't the only ones that read comic books, and it hasn't been that way for a while. Like in the '90s, comics kind of died off. Marvel got in trouble financially for a little bit, but I mean, like, look at it. For over 12 years, we have had at least 3 Marvel movies a year until the unpleasantness came.
Mm-hmm.
Thanos snapped and shit just went south, is all I'm going to say. Uh, so my dad is not quite Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. Like he was the quarterback. He talks about, oh yeah, I had an arm that could do this and I could do this, and I was such an athlete. You know, what is he looking for? Buzz is in the toy box. Sorry, we watched Lightyear and he had to have his Buzz out.
Uh,
Um, but I mean, my dad is 6'4", quarterback, is about as toxically male as you can get on a lot of things. My dad has watched more Marvel movies than me. He has literally watched all of them, but the Edward Norton Incredible Hulk. Like he actually went out and spent his own money to get the 3 Spider-Mans to rent them because they weren't on Disney Plus that he is still stealing from me, but I'm perfectly fine with that. Share passwords, people. Um,
yeah.
any case, I mean, like my dad has watched more of those than me. He asked me questions about comic books, and he's actually thought about getting my son comic books. And I remember this is the man who told me when I'm growing up, "Oh, you're spending all your money on just ink and paper. This is just worthless." I'm like, "Well, if I bought a regular book, wouldn't I be doing the same thing?" Any case, so we live in an era where no one's going to be like, "Oh, look at these dweebs playing Dungeons and Dragons." Like, if someone does that, like, a whole room of people are going to be like, "Bruh, shut the fuck up." Like, there is enough. Like, I'll be honest, there's enough of us that grew up in the tail end of you're being made fun of for this because it was people are fucking childish. Like there were a few people when I played D&D back in high school, oh nerd, and I'm like, yeah, dude, you play Madden. That is literally the same thing, but a video game. You're playing fictitious football games. That is your
Mm-hmm.
fantasy, and you're living it. I mean, in college, like there are still some people you didn't really talk about it, and I mean, it wasn't that like it was just weird. Like it wasn't like I never really had like the people try to beat you up because you play like, and they put that type of stuff like in media a lot. Like
Oh yeah.
I think that part of that stereotype still exists because they put it in media. Like as much as people uh really like the Big Bang Theory, and it's done some things. I personally never could care for it, and it's not just because like, oh, we're gonna make nerd references and laugh, and then it's funny, but now it's cool because it's funny. Like, no, y'all, a lot of these jokes are still made at the expense of these dweebazoids that are here. You're still laughing at them, but now the benefit is you're learning there's all this stuff out there, and you might want in. You might want to see what it is. So there's a benefit to that, even though I most of the time you see that it's still kind of
I mean,
like look at the patron saint of D&D that's out there right now, Eddie Munson from Stranger Things.
mhm.
I've yet to see the season.
Yeah.
I've yet to watch any of Stranger Things.
Same.
But everybody has lost their mind over Eddie Munson and the Hellfire Club, and I'm like, that would probably have fed into the stereotype. I mean, look at it. What's on the back of his jacket? Pit Fiend's face, Hellfire Club. Why does he do it? It's an act of rebellion. It's going to piss some people off, and you got the satanic panic. But at the same time, you don't gotta have that. They could have. I mean, and it's again, it could be completely pivotal to the character, but it still played into kind of that stereotype. And of course, he also listened to metal. Now, I can't really. That might not be a good point for me to stand on because I think a whole lot of us that play D&D actually do listen to metal.
Me included. I
Yeah,
listen to metal.
I have a decent amount of folk metal because Topher introduced me to that. Also,
Yeah,
there's dark. I got introduced to dark bluegrass. Uh,
sounds
an example of that is the band Dead South.
all right. I'm gonna have to check that out.
The song you'll probably find is "In Hell I'll Be Good Company." It's more or less it's bluegrass, but if you listen to the lyrics, it uh it heads into kind of a little bit of old school like sad blues type lyrics and stuff. Anyway, that's I guess that's not the point.
Right. It's okay. Ooh, excuse
But
me, chat. Sorry about that.
but the thing is that you know we still play into some of those stereotypes. Like it just happens. And I mean, and like I said before, D&D was a scapegoat for so many things. Role play became a scapegoat for so many things. Like in the 80s, you had what was it, Masters and Mazes
Mm-hmm.
that had Tom Hanks in it. And then
Yeah.
there was the situation where it's like, well, the kid went crazy and started hanging out in the tunnels underneath this building. It's like because he played D&D. It's like, or he had pre-existing mental health issues that you ignored, and then the kid finally snapped, and the one thing that was helping him cope became a mechanism that was probably something he shouldn't still be hanging on to that much. Like there's a whole lot here, but also you talk mental health in the '80s, it was non-existent. But I mean, also look at the '90s. There was all the scares about Vampire the Masquerade,
Mm-hmm.
which yeah, those people did something stupid. That's not Vampire the Masquerade's fault. That's literally a group of people that I'll be honest, if you cannot differentiate between your character and reality, stop. Please
And
stop.
yeah, I mean that. I mean, then I know that you had brought up like that. You know that '80s movie with just Tom Hanks in it. I was just talking about earlier that I was mispronouncing the name of this movie. It is Dark Dungeons, which is a 2014 American short film that is basically based on that the chick track of the same name. Now, for those that don't know, a chick track are short evangelical gospel tracks originally created and published by an American publisher and religious cartooner Jack T Chick. And not to make this a full on deaf history thing, it was basically that Chick basically created comics and stuff that were basically centered just that around like anti religion views, and then that they would convert, like some wayward people and all of that. That just by judging by what I am reading on the Wikipedia thing, and it is basically a short film that is basically describing D&D up in like some kind of a anti way, where basically that these two girls that they basically decide to attend this wild party, and then it's kind of like a frat party or something. Then you just got these Chad like dude bros yelling with red solo cups, D&D RPG, and then it's just so just dumb, you
Okay,
know.
okay. To be fair, now I want to get a red solo cup and get Knox and Moose and start yelling D&D RPG while we drink from the solo cups, doing just anything just because.
Oh, and then that the trailer gets absolutely bonkers worse after that. So one of the girls is like, I don't know about this. The other girl, obviously, that she goes to like, like to somebody's group that she is known as that they called her like the dominatrix or mistress. No, that they called her that the mistress. That's not on the nose at all. And basically that they start doing a combo of D&D and LARPing, which is live action role playing, and it gets very physical with actual weapons and just weird stuff going on. And then it's just like, what is this? That this isn't the occult. Oh yes, and then that they have a bad, just shitty. That they have a bad like PlayStation One graphics of like Cthulhu at the end of the trailer, and it's like, what the fuck am I watching?
Now, along those same lines, I haven't seen that one, but have you ever seen a movie with Peter Dinklage called Knights of Badassdom?
No, describe this for me. What is this?
Okay, I am going to pull up a link and send it to you in Discord.
Okay, I
2013,
should
2013 film. Peter
I should
Dink,
be scared.
Steve Zahn is in it, and Peter Dinklage is in it. It is a full on. The concept is there's a LARP, and then someone actually summons a demon at the LARP, and then the demon starts killing people at the LARP, and then the heroes have to save the day. And it is ridiculous. It is dumb. It plays on so many stereotypes about LARPing and about everything. However, I will still love this movie simply for the fact Peter Dinklage is LARPing as a warrior and just messing people up with foam boffer weapons and starts talking shit. Again,
This sounds great.
it's
This
no, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this movie's terrible. This movie fully deserves less than the 63% it got on Rotten Tomatoes, but I still love
oh,
the movie. It's kind of like also in the movie Role Models, how they made fun of LARPers. And the thing is you start off with like that mentality and they made fun of it and then it drew people's attention and then people started liking it and now it's more popular. I mean, uh that's the benefit. Again, like I mentioned earlier, that's the benefit is if nothing else, you're drawing attention to this.
right. Wow. So that this is funny that they had a budget of 4.5 million and their box office was not even a quarter of that.
Uh
One, two.
dude, this thing it I don't even know if it has a cult following. It's just I still love some of it because they make the joke in the movie at one point. It's like, oh yes, but the LARP master's beast guide is still stuck together upon the page that shows the succubus. Like just saying that the page that the succubus is on is stuck to the page beside it because of gross reasons, but like they play on those jokes and they run with that joke. And yeah, that I guess that's still some of the problematic thing because like you'll talk to some people, like you'll talk to some people who haven't seen Critical Role, Dimension 20, or any of the like dozens of big name D&D podcasts, and they're like, "Oh, I heard about this. That's that nerd shit." And I'm like, "Yes, yes, it is. Would you like to sit at the table?" But uh, most people don't have that attitude anymore. I mean,
Right.
love it or hate it with Critical Role because I've run into some people who just cannot stand it. They don't like the play style. They don't like the DM style. That's perfectly fine. Just don't be ugly about it. And most of the people
Right.
I've met aren't. But you know, if nothing else, Critical Role more than just about any other D&D podcast has drawn attention, and most people have heard of it and know, oh well, D&D is not this thing people told me it was. I mean, like you also go back to the like Kyle uses the term grognacks, you know, the neck beers, the basement dwellers,
Mm-hmm.
the actuallys
Yeah.
that are out there, and I mean, there's still some, and I'm not gonna lie, I make fun of them too. Probably not the nicest thing I should do, but sometimes when you're an asshole and you run people out of the shop instead of allowing them to learn a hobby that they might have fun with, I will make it part of my job to fuck with you. But you don't run into that much anymore. Critical Role, most people know it. My parents have asked me questions about it because I'll mention it offhandedly, and they're like, "Oh, what is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's a produced live recorded now D&D stream where people literally play D&D and folks watch it. It's literally like watching an NFL game for people."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, okay, that's stupid."
And
And they tell me that's stupid. And I go, "That's fine. You don't have to like it. I do." But so I mean, you don't. I mean, really, among our age group, you don't see that. Now, the really big negative that's still there are kind of the grognacks who are gatekeeping.
right. And then
And
if that's something I
go ahead.
gatekeeping is just like, with me being a POC and stuff, and then it's just like, you know, that we were just talking about this yesterday. Yeah, 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 yesterday at a friend's house about like I don't get clocked as a nerd often because that I'm this big buff looking black guy that just looks like that he would just punch you in the face that if that you step on his foot or whatever. But then it's like no, that I can be as nerdy as the rest of the people, and I haven't experienced any type of gatekeeping behavior at a shop or anything, thankfully. But but I've had people come to me with like horror stories about like, why is this so that this isn't what I want or anything like that.
Oh, the big thing, and I got to give it to our community. Let me start off. I never really went to Geeked Out Gaming. I never went to it when it was there because a couple times I did go in there, I saw some folks of the old guard, the neckbeards, the gray neckbeards at this point of the hobbies, who I remember as a kid didn't want to give me time of day because I was a kid, and I was like, "This is how your hobbies die. You get more people interested in your hobby, they make more shit for your hobby, so then you can do more and have more."
Hmm.
But a lot of people much have like it's the same mentality as the racist fuckers of the Lost Cause. They want to have something that was taken wrongfully, and that people just don't. They want their own little group of sad people that play their little game, and that's fine. You can have fun with it, but when they don't make any more of your game, I mean, you can still play it, but you're not getting any more. There's not going to be any innovation. There's not going to be anything new unless you make it yourself, which I guess can be fun, but it kills it, and there's not new stuff. You would not have all the minis that we have to paint. You wouldn't have the paint companies that
Mm-hmm.
make such good paints. You wouldn't have people who are starting to turn around and sell their maps on Etsy.
Right.
But the problem is that old guard of the hobby would rather kill it than watch it change. And fifth edition quickly became so inclusive because D&D has been a haven for the nerd, for the
Mm-hmm.
outcast, the weird person. Well, the thing is like I said earlier, we're getting Marvel movies every year. You have the Lord of the Rings out there to where some dude who is benching and has the shirt on, "Dost thou even lift, brethren?" has read
Mm-hmm.
all of that and knows the Cimarron front and back. I mean, there's the movie Fanboys, which has a lot of problems, but there's one line in it at the very end. The dude's douchey older brother helps him out when people are being shitty to him, and he looks at bro and he's like, "Dude, it's the wars. We're seeing it." It's the dude bros, the Giga Chads, are into it.
Mm-hmm.
So who became like when all the nerdy stuff became super popular and D&D was still a little fringe, the fringe went to it. The LGBT, people of color, a ton of girls. and women,
Mm-hmm.
which, if anybody doesn't want a woman at their table, you are missing out on some of the best role players you're ever going to have in your life.
Oh, absolutely.
You will also, if you have the idea, oh, all women are so demure and laid back and just,
Mm,
no, they will brutally
no.
murder the cutest thing right in front of you and go, sup. And you're going to be like, okay. Any case, they became the new fringe and they came into it, and the old guard picked on them like they had been picked on, instead of doing what a lot of us, especially the community here in Monroe, starting with Second Home Gaming when it was out on Cypress Road, and then especially at A&H. Hashtag not sponsored, but we'll always promote. Um,
Mm,
they very much are welcoming to everybody. They have
yeah.
always been accepting. And here's the big thing: even if they're not, they at least understand something. Money spins.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're shitty to someone because you don't like an adjective or you don't like something else,
Mm-hmm.
you're not getting their money, which is bad for your business. And that's just the capitalist view on it. But it became this thing for fringe people. And then we had the ugliness kind of rear its head again. There's some people have tried to, oh, D&D will turn your kid LGBTQ plus. And I'm like, no, it'll turn them into a tiefling.
Yeah.
It will turn them into fantasy Twilight.
Right. And to me, it's just like you make solid points, Miro. It's just that for me that it is just like that just as you say that old stereotype of like that the nerd being tossed in the dumpster or swirly is dead. Most nerds that I know that they can mess up people. Like some nerds are black belt, some nerds are, that they like their guns. Some of them are like state regional cheerleaders and stuff. The as that you said before, that nerd that like the nerdy media has just like transcended out of mom's basement and into mainstream. I mean that you have like soccer moms googling over Jason Momoa because he's Aquaman, but that's still, even though that movie may have been meh, it's still, good for the business of that fandom or whatever, you know. But more so like on D things that it is kind of like also whenever I was running a game, I had somebody that I had knew, may he rest in peace. He had just kind of like had like looked at me a kind of way whenever that he was just like that. You didn't already have your encounters pre-rolled, and then I was like no, because that I am more so like off of the fly type of DM. Like you cannot be prepared 100% at the table. You cannot have your cake and eat it too whenever it comes to basically being that type. That you have to be able to be on the fly and open minded. And I know for a long time that this hobby has actually made me a better writer, a better reader. And then that whenever you look at football, basketball, baseball, what is the difference between a sports fanatic and a nerd? Really and truly, that there is none. Because that you have a sport fanatic that will do the face paint and stuff as some kind of goofy clown for like that the New Orleans Saints, that the Los Angeles Clippers, that the LA Dodgers, what have you. And then you will have somebody doing the same thing that they may dress up as that they're tiefling paladin. Then that they might even dress up as Ryu from Street Fighter or whatever. And truth be told, power lifters and anybody that does workout routines, they love Dragon Ball Z. They love it. They will eat it up like it is gumbo.
To be fair, Dragon Ball Z has become so popular that it's not really even considered nerdy anymore. Like, I mean, think about it. Dragon Ball Z has aired in the United States over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about all the way back to the Harmony Gold bad dub.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's one of those things that's been around so long. Like, here's the big thing: fifth edition has been around so long, been so popular. Almost everybody knows it. Like, I mean, you mentioned Exalted or you mentioned White Wolf. A lot of people are like,
Mm,
what's that? And it's like, oh, it's a role playing game. Rolls on D10. So like, what? Like D&D? Sort of. Or like GURPS. Or there's so many other individual like DM Scotty from the DM's Crash released a game called like Easy D6, and it's like a speed run of D&D. Uh, there are a ton of role playing games out there. D&D is just the big name. I mean, like right behind that, like I said, you got anything by White Wolf, and you got Call of Cthulhu.
mm-hmm.
And once you get past those, a lot of people haven't heard of those. Like there was in the '90s, there was a Dragon Ball D20 game. I played it once.
I've heard about that.
Oh, it was difficult. Uh, I died really quickly as well because we did not understand power scaling.
Interesting. Oh, sorry. I thought I had a burp or something. But yeah, I mean, that it is, I just, for me, it's like that. It's just interactive storytelling as a whole. It is, as you had mentioned earlier, that it is a break from life, and then that you are building up those parasocial relationships with folks at the table that they ultimately end up becoming your family. But if we keep having, like you said, that the old guard, that the neck beards, that the lowercase r people, and it's just like, why are you being so exclusive of something that was already exclusive to begin with? You should be happy that like shows like Dimension 20, Critical Role, The Adventure Zone has made this hobby of ours much more popular and more mainstream than actual other pop culture, because it used to be all about spy films and stuff in the 90s and such. Now it is all about what in the world is cool and nerdy, and how can we get in on that, you know?
Pretty much.
But yeah, I mean, it's just pretty much just, anyone listening, just, as that we had said, like last week, do not gatekeep the D&D movie. Please don't. Let your non-nerdy friends enjoy a fantasy comedy action movie. you know that's going to be the main selling point of, it's just going to be, it looks like a fun movie. Just because it may have D and Dungeons and Dragons in the title, do not ruin it for somebody going like, actually that fireball should have only been 20 feet radius, that mage hand is not allowed to lift up more than that 10 pounds. Like, no, we don't need that. We really don't. But yeah, I think that was a good discussion. What do you think?
I think so.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, then that this was a kind of a shorter one, since that we had just only had just two people on. But I would like to thank our head DM Miro Raven all the time, always for these very much engaging conversations.
And thank you for hosting. Uh, let's see. Let me get the schedule right. So tomorrow we're going to do Lost Seas again. Thursday we're going to be back with Tears of Kairos. I will be a little late, but everything will be set up for y'all to play.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if I do not make it, y'all can just have someone keep an eye on the computer, and Jed will have my character sheet. Um, because I will be at parent teacher night. Let's see. The following Sunday will be Into the Woods, followed by Kitchen Table, and then we'll kind of keep
Mm-hmm.
that the weekend of the 19th. We may have some stuff. Oh crap! I have not posted up a schedule yet on Discord. Um, nope. The weekend of the 19th, we may be doing some charity event stuff, and we will have our first that night. We'll have our first investigation check, talking about dragon lore, and then another toolkits. So that's what's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And as a reminder, we have an ongoing charity to raise money for St. Jude's. Any and all donations will go directly to that. Over the course of the next 3 months, we have a goal of $500. So
Yes.
that's what we got going on.
And then you can always find us on at Team Bonus Action on Facebook, Instagram, Gram, or you can just use the link and Twitch, and then you can use the link tree link. Then that will have all of our social media accounts. And at Twitter, we are at bonus_team on Twitter, and then that that you will see updates and stuff, schedule video releases, stuff like that. And well, I would just want to just say, well, since that Knox isn't here,
Don't let your meatloaf.
for Meatloaf. Good night, everybody. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.